Hi, Rick here again. So the reason I'm doing this video is to address something that's been bothering me, I guess, for a while. As you may have surmised, I look into lore from sci-fi, from TV, film and video games, and an annoying trend has started to make itself apparent. Star Trek Discovery, Destiny 2, Star Wars, all of these franchises have expanded universes of lore that has seen numerous retcons and reboots, so I started asking the question, what's the importance of continuity? Now, when I say continuity, I don't just mean, oh, there was a window that was broken and now it's fixed, but the sort of laws that govern lore, the canon. Why do I get so worked up when a series directly conflicts with what has come before? So beware spoilers for these series, as I can't really talk about them without addressing the plots. In science fiction, we're dealing with incredible worlds that push the boundaries of what we can believe as an audience. A stable sense of continuity, therefore, goes a long way in creating that sense of immersion and believability that we need to stay invested in this fictional world. It creates an overarching narrative that long-term fans of the franchise follow, and on a completely personal note, as someone who catalogues and presents different areas of this story, changes to this narrative are annoying, as it feels like someone undoing my work by undoing theirs, or even someone else's. The tales we see on screen, or read, or anything, are built upon two things: a theme, and the universe in which you want to tell it. World building is a very crucial step in making your vision believable. It's like the Mos Eisley Cantina scene. Our plot, that's Luke and Obi-Wan, walks through this new universe, and sure, everything else here is superfluous. They need to talk to the bartender, the arrogant criminals at the bar, and ultimately Han and Chewbacca. But that's it. For the sake of the narrative, that's all they need. But these other creatures, the band, the atmosphere, becomes so much more believable with all these extra additions going about their own lives. That is what lore is. The background upon which the narrative is constructed, and when it's done well, with care, it's fantastic. Canon is the consistency of this lore. It's a promise that the world that's been built has rules its inhabitants have to abide by, just like life. So when these get disregarded, it can be jarring. Take Destiny 2. I'll quickly fill in the basics of Warmind here. The focus of this expansion was around Anna Bray and Rasputin, the latter a Warmind AI that operates the system-spanning defense network, and the former a member of the family who constructed it centuries ago. The point is, until this expansion came out, Anna Bray was definitively dead. Also, there were several Warminds. During the course of this 2 to 3 hour campaign, both of these are contradicted, and one isn't even addressed at all. So why does it matter? Did the storyline being told still make sense? Well, aside from nitpicking, yeah, a little bit rushed, but yeah. The irritation for me comes from the declaration that what you thought you knew can no longer be trusted, it's now irrelevant. The foundation on which this narrative has been built can no longer be trusted because who's to say that events we just witnessed won't be changed later to suit someone else's vision? This is different from the Star Wars Legends approach. When Disney took control of the Star Wars IP, they did away with all the media that had cropped up around the films in favour of establishing their own continuity. The stories that existed beforehand, therefore, no longer happened, in air quotes. However, it does gather all of these stories under one label, clearly establishing what belongs to what camp. However, it's not an irrelevant collection of tales, as it gave rise to many concepts and characters that are being utilised even in the current canon. The Legends material itself has a sort of continuity, but it's become very convoluted with storylines branching all across the universe and timescale, so cherry-picking the best bits and adding them to the new reboot might be the right approach. A better example of this is the Kelvin timeline. The 2009 films have nothing to do with the TV shows, but are still reboots of the franchise, both in lore and visually. However, they are set in an alternate timeline, so rather than replace the events of the shows, they are happening elsewhere as an isolated reality. This keeps both franchises alive. The only show that is relevant to both is therefore Star Trek Enterprise, and look here, a nod to the continuity. It's little bits like this that form another justification for sticking to the canon. These feel like small inside references that an astute fan can claim as a reward and then talk about after the events with anyone who will listen. It cultivates the fandom by creating a world that can be enjoyed beyond the initial experience. So when those stories get ignored or changed without reason to serve a plot element or a greater agenda, it's only natural to feel a little slighted. Now let's be clear, these franchises don't owe audiences anything, but a series that sticks to its established rules is far more immersive. Although there are different expectations from various franchises based on varying levels of adherence to canon. Take Doctor Who for example. The Whoniverse has no continuity really, and even celebrates that fact at times, but it does have a get out of jail free card in the fact that it's a show about alternate timelines, so that any story that happened could conceivably unhappen in an instant. Doctor Who is what you get when you create a show on an episode by episode basis, with most storylines not exceeding beyond one season. Sure, it's got its big consistent villains such as Davros, the Master, and events that occurred like the Time War, and these remain as relatively fixed points for the sake of familiarity, but the show itself is about change. So in this case, the world matches the theme. Still, occasionally this does mean that you get the occasional killed the moon style episode, but you know what, history changed and it never happened. However, a series like Star Trek has a different expectation. A reputation built when The Next Generation aired and picked up as a sequel to the original. Same themes, same world, just new stories set far enough removed from the original that the new aesthetic can be excused. An expectation compounded when Star Trek DS9 and Voyager aired concurrently and maintained that visual evolution, even into the next-gen era films. Because of this overarching devotion to lore, smaller aspects that don't add up, such as the exact dates of the Cardassian border wars, can be excused and are often overlooked by even the most die-hard lorehounds. But this makes it more noticeable when something steps even further outside of the bubble, such as the events of Threshold, which is frankly just weird. Now, Star Trek Discovery is an interesting one. Its visual style is a complete reboot, but it's still set in the universe of the shows. Saying that means that those expectations that were formed from TNG onwards are automatically going to apply here. Add that to the proximity to TOS, and then there's more continuity to take into consideration. The expectation to adhere to something more than just the here and now stories. With such a drastic revisualization of a franchise, it needed to nail the rest of the expected consistency, and for the most part, it kinda did. The addition of the USS Defiant and its origins in the Mirror Universe arc, and the classification of Stamets' research, aid in maintaining the truths of latter series. But other such issues, such as Spock's half-sister, and most notably the design being so radically different that it barely looks like Star Trek, at times still need to be addressed. Now, Discovery's second season is apparently going to focus more on tying Discovery in with existing canon, as at the minute it feels very out there, to the side, so I'm reserving my opinion here. But if any series demonstrates the importance of continuity in its canon, it's Star Trek. A sense of order has to be maintained to provide a sense of investment and unify the audience and fans in a shared understanding of the universe being created. An adherence to this can provide many skeptics the means to overlook other changes or mistakes in service to the plot and endure even a complete visual overhaul. Destiny 2 has its issues, but the inconsistency in its lore only really affects a small percentage of players, as the majority don't familiarise themselves with every facet. But the themes, tone and style of the game remain unchanged. Star Wars substituted a complex and overloaded reality for its own, simpler one, cherry-picking from what was excluded to create a more uniform tale. The 2009 Star Trek voluntarily removed itself from continuity to explore its own narrative, but Discovery is trying to have the best of both and redesign everything while trying to adhere to its legacy. Canon, continuity and lore aren't everything, but I stand by my opening statement. We're dealing with incredible worlds that push the boundaries of what we can believe. A stable sense of continuity, therefore, goes a long way in creating that sense of immersion and believability that we need to stay invested in this fictional universe. Sure, sometimes it can get in the way of telling the tale you want to tell, and in those instances, a compromise has to be made. Whether it's the plot that has to shift to accommodate the lore, or the lore has to be retroactively edited to allow for a story, something's gotta give, and that's just the nature of storytelling. But is it really too much to ask for both? Thanks for listening to this. I'm a little biased, I guess, but even before I ran a channel, lore and the canon that it cultivates meant a lot to me as a fan. But I'm open to change, just so long as it can be justified beyond the whim of a writer. And yes, I know it's not an easy task. Most people accept that. That's why the Star Trek fandom divides things into memory alpha and beta by itself. But in building a cohesive storyline, it requires a commitment to something bigger than the here and now. Thanks again. I've been Rick. And I'm interested to see what you guys think. What's important? Lore, continuity, or do you just want to see a good story? Until then, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.